Hi everyone, this is Jawad and welcome to another enthralling episode of our series. Today I'm joined with a very special guest all the way from the States. Care to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, and thanks for having me on the podcast, Jawad. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Josh Drean, and I am calling in from Minnesota, USA, which is just on the border of Canada. And really excited to be here. I'm a Web3 advisor at the Harvard Innovation Labs. I am core contributor at the Work3 Institute, which is a DAO, a Web3 company that focuses on marrying Web3 technologies with workforce strategies.
Great, sounds very interesting. Tell us a little bit about your work in general. Like, what does that entail? How do you advise people, and what do you do for people to understand what Web3 basically is?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, me and my co author, Deborah Perry Pashoni, are writing a book right now with HBR, and it's tentatively entitled Employment is Dead: How Web3 Technologies Will Radically Change Our Relationship with Work. And so the work that I do is very squarely aligned with how work structure as it is today, how the inefficiencies that we're experiencing in today's workplace can be removed, the pains that employees are feeling through Web3 technologies, whether that's working for a DAO and having more autonomy as a contributor, or if it is finding a way to be more flexible in the work that you do. So there's a lot of ways that we consult with companies, but I think the starting point for us is that employees generally today are unhappy. You can look at the state of the workplace report that Gallup puts out, and the numbers are abysmal. 85% of employees are either not engaged or actively disengaged, which means we have a huge problem with individuals who are not coming to work with their full selves for a myriad of reasons, but it really is costly. These disengaged employees can cost the company upwards of 30% of each employee's annual salary. And so when you look at that on a global scale, we are wasting $7.8 trillion a year in lost productivity globally because we aren't creating experiences that employees want to have. And more so pushing into the Web3 world, we are in need of a decentralized version of work that kind of removes the pains that employees are feeling, which is whether they don't like having a boss that micromanages them, or they don't want to return to the office, they want to continue to work remote and globally, whether it's they don't want to have coworkers in the traditional sense. They like working from home because they can take their kids to school in the morning, pick them up at a decent time. They can work late at night. They have, the general flexibility that they need. So there's a lot of pains that we're looking to solve leveraging Web3 technologies.
Great. And I think it's very neatly kind of like sums up the idea of how work is being looked at in the future. So, thinking about the book itself, what sort of made you guys think to actually put it in the written word that Web3 is the future and bringing the workspace in Web3 will be a challenge for entrepreneurs and job seekers alike? So, what was that process like?
Yeah, I like to think of the future as it, there's a quote that the future exists in pockets, but it's not adapted by the masses. And Web3 technologies are obviously in their early nascent phases, but they are coming and they are being iterated on, and they will dramatically change our relationship with work. And so the purpose of the book, and the reason why my co-author and I came together in this way, is because we see that change already happening, whether it's with the younger generation, whether it's a generation of gamers who have found, these digital worlds to be immersive and exciting. To take that individual and put them into a workplace is quite the challenge, especially if the workplace is task based and it doesn't allow you to have screens up and be able to do multiple things at the same time. So there's kind of a new definition of work arising, and we're seeing a lot of research in the HR space around a global talent marketplace that can disrupt the way that we engage with employees, part-time employees and freelancers. We're looking at the gig economy as a way to um, offer freelancers more autonomy in the work that they do. There's still a lot of pains to overcome there, but we again believe that Web3 and a decentralized system will allow, say, someone who is working for a corporate structure who is interested in pursuing their own passions, they can go and find a Web2 site like Upwork or Freelancer and be able to work on those projects. It's still just an absolute grind to find clients, to be competitive. And so Web3 sitting on the blockchain will be able to match individuals, their skills and their capabilities with the projects that companies or DAOs have available, and they'll be able to work with like passionate individuals on teams that they choose. And we're seeing the birth of that when you look at the way some DAOs are leveraging Discord, which is a great tool for communication, having different channels where that you can go in and you can participate either voluntarily or you can participate to the point where you're adding value for the DAO. So back to your question, the reason why we decided to write this book and publish it with a large publisher like HBR is because even though these technologies exist and they're emerging, the large majority of companies have never even heard of them or don't know how to leverage them. And so this is kind of our way of being an intermediary with large companies, leaders who are interested in these spaces but don't know how to really pivot. We bring Web3 technologies to their company and help them figure out what they need to do from there.
Kind of like piqued my interest as well. That the idea that we're still talking in terms of the employer, employee, office space. We're still using these buzzwords for work. Whereas Web3 is supposed to somehow break that wall and just bring out the idea of collaboration and, you know, into an open space. So, how do we go around changing the narrative in terms of the buzzwords that we're using? Like, it's still work, it's still an employee, it's still an employer. How do you go around changing that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why Web3 technologies will transform the future of work because the buzzwords, the labels, the structure in general, again, was set up for the industrial age. It doesn't work in the information age. And as much as we like to be these Renaissance Web3 individuals, in practice, is this really going to work or is this just a pipe dream? Is this just a bunch of liberal like entrepreneurs who are excited about what a utopian world virtually can look like? Uh, and and so there's a balance there. I definitely believe, but I do think that we will see based on the results that DAOs will be able to produce versus traditional organizations. There's going to be a moment where it's like, wow, they're being so much more productive and efficient than we are with this many people compared to how expensive we have to do to employ our entire staff, especially when you're leveraging AI and other technologies that are emerging. Like the proof is in the pudding. It's going to be the ROI that DAOs can generate. And that's, I think, when people are going to start raising their hand, like, how can I do it like them? That's when the real adoption is going to happen. And we're still in the like evangelizing phase, early adopter phase. I think that's where we come in as we say, look, like the way you're doing it doesn't work. There's lots of technology out there that will help you do it this much better. But if you make the jump to Web3, you'll be able to do it this much better. And here's why. And when we can show use cases, when we can show the actual ROI, that's when we're going to start to see the buy-in. And I just think there's going to be a moment where these early adopters are going to start exploding at an enormous rate. And that's when the rest of the adoption comes. And we saw that cycle in the 90s with the birth of the internet.
Yeah.
Large corporations that we thought were going to be forever died. Small, tiny Amazons and Apples and Microsofts were birthed out of the age of the internet. Web3 will have the exact same thing, where the rise and the fall of individuals and companies who are willing to embrace these technologies or are just wanting to stay status quo and do it the way that it's always been done.
Great. And in terms of the future, how do you see it panning out in next, let's say, 5 years? Like with terms of work, will the language change? Will certain dynamics shift? Will the employee become that empowered being that you just mentioned earlier? Will all of these things happen, or do we have still like a couple of decades to go?
Let me look into my crystal ball
Yes,
and
exactly.
tell you what is going to happen. And the truth is, like, we don't know what the future is going to hold. I mean, we didn't know a pandemic was going to disrupt everything. We didn't really know that the economy was going to kind of set us back a few years with this like return to office. Employees had a ton of options. We saw the great resignation happen. Then the recession, quote unquote recession, happened, and now everyone's like worried about losing their job. And so you're seeing employers use their power to bring people back to the office or to do it, you know, in a way that it used to be, rather than pushing forward based on employees' preferences. All I know today, and we'll start the way we finish, or we finish the way we started, is employees are unhappy and they are looking for other alternatives to traditional employment that meet their lifestyle. Web3 will rise to the occasion and it will provide those opportunities to them. Is that going to be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years? I wish I could say, but regardless, companies today need to fix the employee disengagement problem. Web3 technologies can be the solution. There are a lot of companies out there that are building decentralized versions of social media, decentralized versions of Upwork and some of these other freelancer sites. So it could be a moment where one of those things takes off. It could be a moment of strong adoption, or it could potentially fizzle out. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to continue to see the cycle of iterate and fail and iterate and fail, and the media is not going to be able to handle that, because we saw that with the metaverse, right? The metaverse is here. Mark Zuckerberg launched his vision. A year later, he couldn't deliver. The metaverse is dead. And it's like, well, the people who are in that space building it are like, it's early and we're still iterating. And like,
Exactly.
come back to us when you feel you're ready. It doesn't matter. Early adopters are going to be continuing to drive it forward. So a long-winded answer to say, I'm excited to find out.
Great. And I really like this long-winded answer. And I think metaverse, instead of like metaverse is dead, maybe people should just say metaverse is taking us like a power nap. Like it's eventually wake up sooner or
Yeah,
later. I mean, I
it's
think Zuckerberg jumped the gun on this one as far as technological nuance is concerned. But I think more people will come to realize how this is going to go about. I
oh,
think
for sure.
Apple will help people sort of realign what they're doing.
I mean, look at the juxtaposition of like the Meta launch versus the Vision Pro launch with Apple. It was, look at us playing tennis or doing karate with our instructor in the metaverse. It was very much a vision that's years out. And then you see Apple come in and say, here's all the things that you love, all the tools you've been using, but with a spatial computing element added on top of that. And I think that is what we need right now for adoption. And I think that Apple, even just getting into the game, is going to change, a lot of it. And obviously they have their pulse on the future. And I think it's going to do really well. And we're just going to, push into this next phase of work.
Yeah, and maybe that's where the boundaries get broken by Apple itself. Like the idea of office space is like you have spatial computing now. So go into the mountains and maybe finish the deadline that you're trying to meet, like something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully believe that there are going to be people who are done with the office at this point. It's like, I don't have to be here with you. No one does. And the functionality that will come with it is going to be enough for, at least the younger generation to say goodbye to traditional employment and embrace wearing a headset and taking it wherever they go. The fact that it's just like a computer right
Yeah.
here is phenomenal. Now, there's obviously challenges technically with like the battery life and like, can we actually do all of the things that we need to do, that we need a laptop for? Like, It's a first version, and we'll continue to iterate on top of that. But I don't think that Apple is used to launching a whole new category and then failing. So this could be it, but
Yeah,
we'll
I
see
mean,
how
there's a
this goes.
first time for everything, but then Apple has history behind it, so you kind of like want to back the horse that's been winning the races.
That's it.
So
Yeah.
I think this has been really fun. I think we could actually go on for another 2 3 hours. The topics themselves are coming out of the conversation, but unfortunately, we're kind of like pressed for time. So I think on this nice lighter note that the future is exciting, the future is uplifting. I think it's good to end this. Any last words of sage advice that you might want to give employees, employers, entering into Web3 space for work and stuff like that?
Yeah, the future is bright. There are always challenges with emerging technologies. We haven't even talked about security. We haven't even talked about, you know, dealing with human nature and smart contracts and all of the other things out there. But all of this will be used for, as it always is. It will be used for good. It'll be used for bad. But regardless, it will augment the way that we interact with each other at work. It will change how we interact with each other virtually. It will improve a lot of the pains that employees are feeling today. And so if any of you are curious or just want to like stay in tune with the emerging technologies, we'd love for you to check out our work at the Work3 Institute. That's work3.me. Always hit me up on any social platform at Josh Drean. And I'd love to continue the conversation. Love healthy debate, and I love pushing this forward together.
Great. We'll definitely be in touch, and it will be great to just continue this conversation because I feel that there's so much to explore and so much has been left within our discussion as well, like the security element would, and also the idea of human connection within the space itself. Like, how does worker space align with remote, and what does that do for employees as well? So a lot to uncover as well, but at the same time a lot we did manage to cover, so that was very exciting. Really glad having you, Josh. Thank you for taking the time out and having this wonderful discussion with us.
Jawad, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Okay, guys, see you. Bye.
All right. How was that?